Wow.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right. And I don't know how well you're going to be able to see what's up there. My name is Len Peterson, and I'm the county assessor for the county, okay? And I've been with the county for almost 20 years. I took over from Marty Cody. Some of you remember him, okay? And I have 5 people under me in the assessor's office. 3 of those 5 people are appraisers, and the other 2 are administrative, okay? And I have, I work for the county. That's who I work for. But I'm licensed through the Department of Revenue. It's very confusing. I got like 2 bosses. My position with the county is appointed, not elected. The reason for that is you have to have a license to do what I do. And generally it's called a SAMA license, which is a Senior Accredited Minnesota Appraiser. Okay? And so not just anybody can be a county assessor if they don't have the credentials. And so what you're going to find different from listening to me is almost 100% of what I do is directed by the Department of Revenue. Okay, and I'll get into that. And so when we raise values, when we lower values and all that kind of stuff, and I'll get into that too, it has nothing to do with the city coming to me and saying, we need more money. It has nothing to do with the county coming to me and saying, we need more money. I mean, that's kind of been out there, but it just don't work that way. And I will show you how it works, okay? But almost everything I do is almost statute related. And what I do is how it's done in the whole state of Minnesota. What I do is how every county does it. I mean, that's statewide, okay? And so the first thing I want to talk about is what we call a quintile. Quintile means 5, and I'm not going to read this, but it's up there, but there's a Minnesota statute that mandates I have to look at all property every 5 years. That's mandated. And so in the county, we have roughly a little over 17,000 taxable parcels. They could be residential, could be commercial, agriculture, whatever. We have over 38,000 tax-exempt parcels. Can you believe that? 38,000 tax-exempt.
Which means they're...
And they can be state, they can be county, they can be churches, they can be schools. There's different organizations that are granted tax-exempt status. Our office puts the classification on your property. Most probably everybody in here, I'm guessing, is probably residential. Okay? But every 5 years, we have to come out and look at your property. And if we have photos of your property, and generally we have a photo of the front of the house, we have a photo of the rear of the house, and we have a photo of each building on your property, no matter what it is. It could be a storage shed, could be a garage, whatever. Okay? And we don't get inside your property. And the biggest reason for that, quite frankly, is we don't have the manpower to do it. And sometimes people will say, well, if you would see the inside of my property, you might change the value, you might lower it. And we always will say, look, if you think me looking at your property interior would change the value, we're more than happy to come out and look at it, okay? On the other hand, what we see is what we have. We might get out there and, oh, your basement's finished. We didn't know that. Okay, but at the same time, we just don't get that done. I'm guessing if we would, in a day, look at 40 properties, probably 30 of them, people aren't even home. Okay? And so for us to try and schedule appointments to meet with people, it just wouldn't work. So anyway, we look at your property every 5 years. And what we look for is, are there any changes? Now, if you've added a building, you've probably got a permit in the city. And that's a reason for us to come out there. Okay? And there's only two reasons probably we're going to come out to your property. One is you've got a permit for a building, and two, it's quintile. Those are the only two reasons we would come. And so we come out there and we look for changes. And I'll get into this a little bit later. Did you put a new roof on? Did you re-side it? Do you have new windows in? All that kind of stuff. It can go the other way. When we value your property, there's only 2 or 3 things you do, and I'm going to back up a step so you understand this. We're mass appraisers. Okay? There's a big difference in what we do versus what a private appraiser does. If anybody here ever knew Bill Torseth by any chance, I used to work for Bill. That's a private appraiser. It's altogether different. If you pay an appraiser to do an appraisal on your property, that person's going to get 4 or 5 comps, whatever. They're going to look at the number of the bedrooms and the layout of the land. We don't do any of that. There's just no way we can do that. It's a whole different system. Now, the statute mandates that your property, all property should be valued to market value. And market value is what a willing buyer will pay to a willing seller. That's market. And what I'm going to get into a little bit later is that the Department of Revenue says that your value has to be between 90 and 105% what property sells for. So I'm going to jump ahead and make a statement, and then I'm going to come back to it. If your property keeps going up in value, and it's not because we've been out there and you've put a new roof on, guess what? It's because people are paying more for property in the city. Period. Our job in the last 3 years has been a nightmare because of what property's been selling for. I could probably take anybody in this room and look at your records over the last 15 years. And if I went back to 2013, 12, your value is going to be pretty even. We'd be lucky if we'd take a 10% increase. We'd have an issue if we had to take a 20 or 30% increase. Okay? Guess what happened due to people paying more for property? I'm going to say about 3 years ago, but it's been a couple 3 years. In Rainier, on the Rainy River, we raised that whole area 75% due to sales. You don't think I didn't hear about it? I'm about ready to look for another job. Islands that year, 70%. The mainland that year, 60%. A couple years ago, the city of Little Fork, we never raised values, 60%. And I had a forum in Rainier, just like I am right now, and I showed them what property was selling for in Rainier, or in Little Fork. There could be a mobile home we had $40,000, $50,000 on selling for $89,000, $100,000. Okay? But what I'm telling you, that's going on everywhere. That's just not in Coochin County. Statewide.
What happens if this takes a turn?
Goes the other way.
Yeah.
Good question, because this year, going ahead, I reduced the values in Little Fork 10%. because it went over the 105% deal. Say. And there again, it's sales related on that. So, without getting into it real deep, and I don't want to bring up somebody's property here because number one, I don't have the permission to show it to everybody. But when we value your property, there's only maybe 3-4 things we look at. And we look at the age it was built. We have to put it into the computer. And the computer has a built-in schedule. That's the same for everybody. Now, we change that schedule a little bit by what we call neighborhoods. In other words, if I've got a home on the lake, for instance, that home does not have the same value if it was down Big Falls or maybe in International Falls. So we put neighborhoods to sort of equalize the area that you're in. We do that in the falls, and I'll show you that. Okay? So we go in the computer, and remember, we're mass appraisers. We don't care how many bedrooms you got. All we care about really is age of the house, the size of the house, square footage, and the type of house it is. We call it a grade. A ranch is a grade. A ranch with a basement, a ranch with no basement, a ranch with a basement finished, ranch with a basement not finished, story and a quarter, story and a half, 2-story, split level, bi-level. What we try to do is make sure that when we value your house, we're kind of looking at the same style of your house that other houses like yours is. That's what we really try to do. If you'd be able to go through our records and take probably all 2-stories in the city, they probably are all the same grade. The difference is the size, the difference is when it was built. Say, and that's where we come up with the value. And our value really is replacement less depreciation. Older the house, more depreciation. Now, this is going to really get complicated, okay? What do you do when you got a house that was built in 1940? Longevity of a house is about 40 years. If you didn't touch that house, didn't paint it, didn't redo the roof, didn't side it, didn't do anything, in 40 years that house is going to be on the ground. So if you've got a house built in 1940, 1960, whatever, it kind of creates a little bit of an issue because we can't tell the computer it's 1940. It wouldn't have any value. In fairness to you, we can't tell the computer it was built in 2025, can we? That's not fair either. We got to tell the computer the value of that house, or here's what it's called. It's called actual age when it was built. And there's another age that's called effective age, which is kind of what's the longevity left in the house. This is where it gets tricky because we don't get in a house. I can show you a picture of a house in 1960 and the outside's immaculate. And they call up and they say, "We got my house value at $120,000. I'm looking at that picture and I said, "Wow, it looks very nice to me." And they say, "Well, you haven't seen the inside." Okay, remember what I told you earlier. If you think me coming out and looking at it will change my mind, I come look at it. So guess what? I get out there. Original bathroom. Original kitchen. I used to be in real estate. I used to be in insurance. I had every license there was. I used to build homes. The two biggest improvements to homes are baths and kitchens. And that depends on how much you improve. If you've got a kitchen, you could be talking $20,000, $30,000. But remember, we don't get in there. So I get in there and guess what? We haven't done a thing. So that might make me back that effective age back a little bit, tell the computer the house is just a little bit older. On the other hand, I go out there, it's got a brand new roof, brand new windows, brand new siding, da-da-da. I'll move that effective date closer to 2025. Because the minute you put a roof on your house brand new, the minute you side it, the minute you put new windows in, your house is worth more. Period. And remember, we want to get your value between 90 and 105%. Now, why is that important and why does the state require that? Well, without getting into levies and taxation and everything, the state has to have a way to keep all property up to a current value statewide. And that's how they do it. That's what they need to rely on. So you can go into International Falls, you can go da-da-da, and it'll be, what is the taxable value of Cooch County, for instance, da-da-da-da-da, okay? And so when we value a home, is it perfect? No. We try to do the best job we can. We try to compare your houses with others. I don't get out in the field like I used to, but I've got appraisers that know probably the homes in the city way better than I do. They can almost look at a house and say, yeah, that house is worth that. And the problem we have is when, and I'll get into this later, when we raise values, most people come in and say, well, I can never get that for my house. I don't know that. I honestly don't. With my licensing level, I cannot give you an opinion on what you can get for your house. I'm not qualified to do that. When people come in, I try to show them what homes have sold for. And we can do all that. So the first thing, I just want to run by you is we have to do a quintile on your property. And that's what we look for, okay? So,
Quintile.
Yeah, any questions on a quintile?
What is that? What does that mean, quintile?
I'm sorry, I thought I stated that. We have to look at it by statute every 5 years.
Just looking at it as a quintile.
And we have to physically inspect it. And you can actually go on the county website and put anybody's parcel number in there and see the pictures and everything that we do. We have, when we go out to the house, they sketch it, they measure it. And we have a sketch of your house. And then we have the pictures, okay? And so if somebody comes in, the first thing we say, well, let's look at the sketch. We want to make sure we have your square footage right. We want to make sure, all this is right. And then we can talk about the value. Yes?
So the bottom line is you make the decision on what to base people's taxes on yourself.
I have nothing to do with taxes.
The real estate taxes?
No, I have nothing to do with taxes.
The value of the home. Though.
Value of home
You have
only.
The last say on.
I'm sorry?
You have the last say on who values.
We have the final say on value. It is no way tax related.
But you have the final say on the value of the home.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And go ahead.
So if I had a professional appraiser come out and appraise my house and you would raise my house, say $3,000, but they say no, would you go by the appraisers?
We would look at it and we'd give it some credibility.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because I've seen appraisals on the same house 2-3 days apart as high as $30,000 apart.
Oh.
And also I've seen people bring in appraisals and it's a bank mortgage type appraisal where it has nothing to do with the value of the house, say. But to your answer, yes, we definitely would give it credibility. And part of the problem you have with that, whether it's your appraiser saying what it's worth, whether it's your banker saying what it's worth, or it's me. Do you know what appraisal is? An opinion.
Right.
That's all it is an opinion. That doesn't mean your appraisal is gospel truth.
Right.
Nor mine.
Nor yours.
Nor mine, yeah. But we definitely will look at where that's been an issue actually, is they have it appraised a year ago, and now a year later values have gone out of sight. And they say, well, I paid this for it a year ago. It's obsolete. But we will look at that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. We want the best value we can get on your property. And we don't want to gouge you. I'll be honest with you. we wouldn't raise any values at all if we didn't have to. You know, but it's the Department of Revenue that mandates that.
But do they check on that?
Oh, yes, and I'll get into that.
Oh.
We're going to get into what I'm calling the sales ratio study. It's why we raise or lower your values. Okay? Any other questions on the quintile? A couple other things. We have a right to be on your property. That's statute too. We can go out in the country and there's a sign up there that says, stay out. We can go on the property. We can walk right by that sign and go on the property. You have a right in writing to send us a letter and say, for instance, I don't want you on that property, on my property. And we honor that. Okay? We might have 2 or 3 people that say, I don't want you coming out here unless you call me. We honor that also. If you send us a letter saying, this hardly ever happens, but if you send us a letter saying, I want you on my property, and so we just look at your house from the road, and we put a value on it, and you go to the Board of Equalization complaining, guess what? They're going to listen to you. You lost your right of appeal because we weren't allowed to be on the property. That hardly ever happens, to be honest with you. I just want you to know that. We don't, it's where we have these issues. We're in a situation where we work for the county and people can get real political. And it's like, if you're government, get out of here, you know. And, but it really goes, I think, for the most part, pretty good. Like I said, we might have a few that say, call me when you come. We don't have a problem doing that. You know, we really don't. Any other questions on the quintile? Everybody understands it. And when we do the quintile, like for the city, I'm thinking we spread that over 3 years. So we don't do the city all at once in 1 year. We do it over 3 years. And we have that all scheduled. And these quintiles, you can understand if we're doing North Home, how long it takes, an hour just to drive down there to do it. And when we do the lake out there, when we have to do the islands, we go by boat. We've done islands by snowmobile before. We've done hunting shacks by 4-wheelers. But we have to look at every property at least every 5 years, and we have a picture of that. You know, with our pictures have a date on there. Okay? Any questions on a quintile? And that's all property. That's commercial, residential, land, everything. Okay? No questions? Okay, now we get to the good stuff. Why did your value go up? So, some of this is kind of repertory, and I don't know if I can blow this up or not. It doesn't look like it. I've already told you that we have to value your property at market value. And every time somebody sells property, there's what's called a certificate of real estate value. And in that value is what EMV, estimated market value, that's my value, and selling price, what it sold for. Okay? And we look at every sale in the whole county. Okay? And then I'm going to jump ahead here. When we are required to do a sales ratio study. Now what we're doing is analyzing sales. We're off the quintile. And so we're required to analyze sale. Our office sees every sale that happens in the whole county. Every year the Department of Revenue does a sales ratio study. Starts October 1st of 1 year and finishes the end of September the next year. It's been going on forever. It's the same in every county. It's in this whole state of Minnesota. That is a Department of Revenue thing. The reason I stress that is because we do not have the liberty to do just things our way and do it different. Okay? That's mandated. That's the way it is, like it or not. There's some of those things I don't even agree with, but that's the way it is. Okay. So we also, when we look at sales, there can be market conditions that the state can put on, and this will make sense later. And a market condition is, this is something that never used to be an issue until all of a sudden prices start to escalate real quick. And when you get into a market condition adjustment, it would be like, for instance, a home that in February sold for $80,000 and maybe in October sold for $100,000. The percentage of increase in the same year. And so the Department of Revenue puts those adjustments on counties. And our adjustment, I think, in the city, I'd have to look, was around like 6% or something. That's not anything I have anything to do with. Okay? And actually, you can appeal that if you have a reason to appeal it. And so what I did this year is I think there's about 70 sales in the city. We'll get into that. And I took all the sales in the first 6 months, and the second, the ratio was the same. The ratio, and I'll show you this, is my value divided by what it sells for. That's called a ratio. It's very important you understand that. Every time there's a sale, the state, our office, runs that ratio. Okay? Sales chasing, state board. Here it is here. The State Board of Equalization orders assessment changes when the level assessment as measured by the median sales ratio is below 90 or 105. All that means to me is if I didn't do anything and the ratio of International Falls was 80%, guess what's going to happen? State's going to issue an order. And the values are going to go up to get it over 90. Okay? It's always been that way. Why don't I just let that happen every year? It's because I have a say in how we get it to 90. And there's a lot of processing that goes into how we get it to 90. And what you're going to find out is when I show you the end ratios, because it's already done and you got your yellow notices, we ended up around 92%. Okay? And I'm going to digress for a second here because I've got something for your information. And people just forget this. You get 3 notices every year. This yellow notice comes from our office. You just got it. This is value only. This notice is telling you what your value is going to be for the next year. Now understand, if your value, this is what your value is going to be for the next year, you don't pay taxes till the year after that. Okay? But this is value only. And nothing else. And it will say on here, for instance, that there's open book meetings for cities, and it has the hours here. It will also say there's a county board of approval, which means if you could go to the county board and appeal your value. And it generally says in here, you got to come see me first. And it should be that way because most of the time we can hopefully work it out, okay? The truth is, when you get this, you're welcome to come in anytime. You don't need to wait till the Board of Equalization. You don't need to wait till what's called open book, open city, whatever. You're welcome to come in anytime. if you don't come in and see me or one of my workers, and you just go to the Board of Equalization, you got 15 minutes to plead your case. And when you go there, I'm going to tell the county commissioners why I think your value is what it is, and you're going to tell them why it isn't. Just don't say, I don't think I can get that for it. That don't work, okay? But you're welcome to come in anytime and go over your stuff. That's an open door policy. You don't need to wait till this, okay? Then the second notice you get, and this is where it gets confusing, you get this. It's about levies and stuff. I don't attend these levy meetings because what happened 2-3 years ago, it got into a mess over property values. And somebody even said, well, I wish the county assessor were here so we could. No, this isn't about values. I don't belong at this meeting. This is to discuss the levies. Whether it's city levies, county levies, whatever. That's your input to the levies. Value's done. Everybody understand that? Here's where it's a problem. They don't read these. And then maybe you might not pay attention to this, and then what happens? They didn't read the valuation, and then all of a sudden, this comes out. Your final notice. Guess what? When you get this, you can't appeal the value. It's too late. The Department of Revenue, you're going to hear a lot about me saying mandates, and it's not like I'm trying to get out from underneath what I do. The Board of Equalization's in June every year. This year I think it's in the 17th and the 24th. One's in the afternoon, one's in the evening. When that last Board of Equalization is done, there is no appealing of values, period. It's done. The state of Minnesota kind of has to have an end guideline of what all the values are going to be in the whole state of Minnesota. Only exception to that is tax court. Okay? Tax court is where you hire an attorney to appeal your value. And you're essentially suing the county, suing me, whatever. I've been to tax court with Boise PCA. I've been to tax court with Menards. I've been to tax court with the OK Mart. I've been to tax court with Tractor Supply. That's normal for those big companies. That's normal. It's rare you ever go to tax court with a residential. And you really don't want to. It's kind of a waste of money. It really is. But I want you to understand that for me, you need to pay attention when you get that. And if you don't agree with that, that's when you need to come in. And we can try to show you why we came up with that value.
Is that the same as your final?
Pardon?
Is the yellow one the same?
This one here, the final, is the results of the levies being approved and all that kind of stuff. And then the final, all that being put on my value. Okay? That's taxes put on value. But when you get this, it's value only. Okay?
So,
And-
I have a question.
Yeah.
When a house is sold and you have market value on that tax statement, how come what they sold the house for isn't on that statement?
That I can't answer.
I mean, because you get all those, you said you get all
Yeah, but it
those.
don't go on that particular notice for whatever reason. I don't know why.
That makes
I
sense.
guess I'm not understanding your question.
If I sell a house for, say, $80,000 and my tax statement says its market value is 60,
Sure.
why isn't it now 80?
We can't change it to 80. It's against the law.
Why, I just sold it for 80,000.
It's against the law. Okay. That's called spearing. No. You're shaking your head, but think about this.
Yeah,
That is to keep assessors, in a sense, from adjusting sales to cover up their sales ratio to make it look good. If you, what was the price you were saying?
80 and 60.
And it sold for 60?
No, so,
Sold for 80.
Okay, it's against the law for me to raise it.
yeah, but you get all that in the.
I know, but it's against the law for me to immediately raise it. I can't do that. I can't raise your house for that reason unless I raise all the houses in your area.
Right.
Say, that's called spirit.
But you raise the taxes on everything.
I have nothing to do with taxes. You're getting into a whole different deal. No, I don't deal with I have nothing to do with why your taxes go up.
Then who does?
I'm not going to get into taxes. I mean, you can laugh, but that's not what
Well,
I do.
know, but I thought that's why we were here, is what I'm saying.
I made it very clear this is over values only.
Oh, look.
Okay, I contacted Facebook because there was misinformation there. And I said, this is value only. I went on the radio this morning live. This is value only.
Okay.
No taxes. And I'm sorry if,
Yeah, I know,
no, I just want to be fair to
To
you.
me, it's just a cluster.
Yeah, I want to be fair to you on that, say. Now, it's interesting, you brought up a good question, okay? In the state of Iowa, when property sells, it automatically goes to the sale value.
Well, that makes sense because, I mean, to me, I'm constantly looking at taxes and coochie.
Yeah, I hear you.
And there is absolutely no rhyme or reason to any of it.
I can't help you there.
Yeah, and I just don't get it.
Yeah, I can't help you there.
Woofda.
Yeah, I can help you on value.
But value determines the taxes you pay.
That's only an ingredient of taxes. Yeah, it's one of many things. Levies determine value, or taxes. Schools, referendums, all that stuff has a part in taxes. I'm just one deal. Okay? I'm not saying it doesn't affect taxes. I have honestly seen my value not go up and taxes go up. I've seen my value go down and taxes go up. I've seen my value go up and taxes go up. There's too many other things involved that I don't deal with there. I'm not trying to get out from under it, I just don't deal with that. That's a whole different department, say. So what we do is we do a sales ratio study each year. Does everybody understand that the value's got to be between 90 and 105%? Everybody understand that? You're clear on that? Okay? What I want to show you now is a report that I did for the Rotary. And I can maybe blow this one up a little bit.
Down on the bottom right, I think there's a thing that you can make it bigger.
What, I'm sorry?
On the bottom right, there's a place to make it bigger. If you scroll
Yeah, no, it's right here too.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let me educate a little bit. Now remember that 90 to 105%? In Cooch County, there were 2 apartments sold for 46% ratio. That means they sold for twice what my value was. Commercial, there was 6 sales, 100%, between 905. And I'm going to skip down to School District 361. Now, we do sales ratio studies by taxing district. Okay? 361 is its own taxing district. 362, its own taxing district. 363, it's its own taxing district, and there's a couple more. Rainier is its own district. International Falls, it's its own district. Little Fork is its own district. Big Falls, North Home is its own district. If you don't remember anything else about International Falls, remember this. Your values are only related to sales in International Falls. They have nothing to do with sales on the lake. They have nothing to do with Rainier 361, 62. That's a big myth. Okay? Only sales in the city. And as you can see in 361, there was 44 sales 22 were on water, 22 were off. So I even break it down by on water, off water. Now that's important when you're in 361 because you get out on the lake, you got the big lake, you got all the islands, you got the rat root, you got Black Bay, you've got all that. So you got to figure all that stuff out. But the bottom line is, in 361, the ratio is 85%. I got to get it to 90. In 362, there were 12 sales only. I'm going to back up another step. Department of Revenue mandates that if there are 6 sales in a taxing district, I got to run the ratios. Okay? I got to run the ratios. So in 362, there were 12 sales, 8 off water, 4 on water, 81%. But off water was 85, on water was 70. Big difference there. 363, 11 sales, 75. I'm just going to come all the way down. Little Fork, there were only 4 sales. North Home, there was only 1 sale. Rainier, I'm going to go to International Falls. There were 8 commercial sales. Here's what we're going to talk about today, for the most part. There were 70 sales in the city in the last year. And 68 of them were off water. The 2 water sales being in Shorewood Drive. So what I did in terms of value was based on those 70 sales. And the sales ratio of those 70 sales. Okay? So I have to get International Falls to 90%, or a state's going to do it. How do I do it? I can raise land only. I can raise buildings only. I can raise land a percentage, buildings a percentage. This year we decided to leave land alone. And I'm going to back up another step here. You're learning a lot today, okay? Land in the city. I'm really big at what I call equalization. And I started this when I took over. If you go out on the lake, when you go out on the islands, you take Stop Island, everybody in Stop Island is paying the identical amount per front foot. Period. And what I did in the cities, in the International Falls at one time, they were trying to put frontage on lots and all that kind of stuff. We, 2-3 years ago, we did the square footage on all lots. And all I can tell you is this. Whatever plat you're in, you are paying the same amount per square foot as everybody else in your plat, period. I don't believe in corner lots and all this kind of stuff in International Falls. It don't make sense to me. To me, it's real easy to explain. You know, I don't want people coming in and saying, well, how come my lot's this value? It's all the same per square foot. If you've got a bigger lot, you're going to pay more. Say. And that works real well in the city. I mean, it really does. It's rare in the city we get a problem with land. Anybody in here got commercial property? Good, I can skip that. I redid all commercial land a couple years ago and I put it into 3 areas. Highway 53, Highway 1171, and downtown. And here again, equalization. I tried to get the land downtown businesses all kind of centered into their values. 53 on the highway, 1171, okay? And it's kind of broken down to, if you're on the main highway with a business, you pay a certain amount per square foot. If you're on a major secondary road, it's a little bit less. And if you're in the sticks but in the city, it's even less yet, okay? Here's the issue you have in Coochin County. You don't have sales. It's tough being an appraiser in this county. It's tough being a private appraiser in this county. Everything is predicated upon sales. The city's a little bit easier. I think 3 years ago we had 140 sales in the city. And this year we have 70, okay? So what we're going to do now, everybody understands that 80.32%'s got to get to 90. You all understand that? So now how do we do that? Okay. So what we do now is we go in and we take, let me tell you what I could do. I could just say, okay, I'm going to raise the whole city same amount across the board. Okay? And I can actually, I don't know if you can, I don't know if I can, I'm trying to bring this up a little bit. Can you see this right here? What? Can everybody see where this cursor is? This is a chart that we have factored in there that I can just change in an instant. So if I go down here, and the ratio in the city is 81.5%. So now we go what ifs. So I go up here, I'm going to leave land alone because we did that. And I'm going to put 1.1. That's a 10% increase. Everybody follow that? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 10% on all those 70 sales in the city. And my thinking is treat everybody the same. Sounds pretty good. So I go in here and I do that. Come on. I don't know why it's not letting me. I'm not sure why it's not letting me do that. Hang on a sec, just give me a minute here. I don't know what's going on here. There we go. I'm adding 10% to all 70 sales. You see this 8241 over there? You see what it went to? 89? Not enough. Not enough. So I go back up here and I say, okay, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to put 1.20, I'm going to go up 20% citywide. Put it all the way across the board. 96%. I can look at that and say, I'm happy. It's between 90 and 105, right? Mm-hmm. How much do I need?
90.
What's the minimum? 90. That's too much. I could go all the way to 105%. Do you know what that would do to your values? There were actually some counties down south that got taken to court because they thought the county assessors were pushing that to the 105%. And that's wrong. Now I like 96%. That's middle of the road. I don't need it. I really don't need it. I got to be careful because if I stay down at 90, 90.1, 90.2, when we won the final ratios, there could be a mistake in there and the Department of Revenue is going to guess what? They're going to do their own study after all my work's done and they're going to say, oh my God, you're under 90, we're going to add. Okay? So that's why we don't do it this way. Now I could go back and say, well, maybe 20%, maybe 15%. Okay. So what we do then is, and I got to go back and change these, get off here. What I'm trying to kind of get you to understand is it can get very complicated trying to get those ratios to 90%. So all I have to do is that. I don't have to go any further. So what I try to do is, let's break it down. Let's see if I can find out where the problem is. And so what do I do then? I've run ratios by sales amount. But what we like to do now is run the ratios by the plat that you're in. And I know, I lived in Duluth for a long time, and I lived 2 blocks away from a street that if you moved on the other half, the values were half of what yours was. I'm not from here. I don't have the knowledge of Falls, South Falls, all that kind of stuff. I run every individual plat, no matter where it is in the city. And if you take yours, do you know what your property identification number is? If you go on here and you look right here, this one says 92006. Okay? You pay attention to the 006. That's a Pacific area. So now let's go in here and we're going to start from the top and we're going to take, I got to downsize this some. Okay. So we're going to go up here and the first column you're going to see, here's what I did. And this is just me. I have to figure out a way to break all this down. Do I run the ratios, 6, 7 sales in a plat, 5 in a sales, whatever. My decision is if there was 3 sales in a plat, I'm going to run the ratio. I'm looking for trends. 3 sales in a plat doesn't give me a good trend, but it's something to work with. 1 sale in a plat doesn't give me a trend. That sale could have been too high, too low, whatever. So anyway, when you look at this, in that plat, the ratio in that plat was 86%. The ratio in this plat was 85%. The ratio in this plat was 99%. There's no reason I should raise the value in that plat when it's already 99%. Why should I put 10% on it or 20%? It's already there. Leave it alone. 83%, 89%. This one here, Shorewood Drive, 73%. I mean, I get calls from people in Shorewood Drive. Man, the ratios, I know it's only 4 sales, but the ratio is 73%. 2 on water, 2 off water. Okay? And then down here, this one here, this area here, 64%. That is 92,109. And so 79%, 71%. That's what I adjust. And I try to put the increases where they should be. Now I'm going to show you something, because remember I said we do this study every year? People don't understand that. That's why do you think your values go up and down every year? It's we do a study every year. Over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see last year. These are the same plats. Did we take an increase? No, no, no. None of these took increases last year. None of these. This went up 5%. This went up 5%. This went down 10. This went down 20. This went down 20. Down here, none of these went up. This one went down 15. None of these went up. That was a year ago. And that all changed this year. And I don't know what it's going to be next year. But I want you to understand how that works. And I want you to understand that we really try to address the areas that need to be addressed. We just flat out don't put it on everybody. You know, I don't, you people know this town way more than I do. Are there plats people will pay more to get in? I don't know. Are there plats where the value is half of what it was? I don't know that. I go by plat. And actually, if I went over here to show you how far I look into this, I know how many parcels are in each of these plats. I know with for instance, 06, this one here, that's whatever. This is Carson, Loopy's, Auditors, Parkway, Riverview, da, 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 da. Okay? But that's how I put the values on there. Now, what we do then is we take all those 70 sales and we run the ratios. and we take the median ratio. In other words, you saw down at the bottom 82%. Where do we get 82? Well, any questions on this?
How many plats are there?
Oh, that I don't know.
In the city of International Falls, you don't know how many?
No, I guess I don't. I probably should, but I don't offhand.
Really?
No.
Oh, is there a map of the plats?
Oh, I'm sure there is
with the
somewhere.
number
Yeah,
on it?
yeah. I'm looking right here, for instance. I could take right here, if this is credible, I don't know, and go down here, and if I did this right, that looks like there's about 55 plats.
In the city of International
Yeah.
Falls?
If I did that right, yeah.
Because I'm looking to buy a house, and I want to buy a house in a plat with at least 90% ratio in it.
Well, that can't help. I mean, that can change. No, I hear you, but that can change next year. Okay?
As long as it's close.
Yeah. Are we up to date on, are you with me still? All right. Excellent. You're going to like this next one. We started doing this a few years ago, and here it is here. Here is all the sales in International Falls. This is what we call South Falls. I'm just going to down a few, but I'm not going to do them all. But I want you to know where we get our ratio from. Okay? The first house we had 39 on, sold for 30,000. That ratio was 120%. Too high. The second house we had 89 on, sold for 109,000. That ratio is 81%. Too low. Okay? The next house we had 46.4, sold for 61.5. The next house we had 98, sold for 146. Remember I told you earlier, as long as people keep paying more for property, your values are going to go up. And we do this to show people what's going up, what these houses look like, okay? Here's one that we had 339 on, sold for 358. Here's one we had 175, sold for 219. So what you do is you take all of those ratios and put them in line from bottom to top, top to bottom, and you take the median ratio. Now, why do you take median and not average? Median throws out the highs and the lows. So when you take all those 70 sales and run the ratio, you're going to get about 82% ratio. I got to then take it to 90. And we do that every year. And then we go in there and we adjust each of those plats to get it to what we need, over 90%. When we finished and this went to the state and everything, I think our ratio was 92%, 92.1 or something. What I want you to try and really understand is we're not trying to gouge you. I got to get over 90% whether you like it, I like it, or whatever. I have no choice in that. I'm not trying to pawn it off. Okay? But I don't want it at 96, 97, 98, 99. Do you realize for me to go to 92 to, let's say, 103, 102, I probably have to raise your values like 70% just to get close? That's insane. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Now, we do the same thing for every taxing district. Like I said, I think it was a couple years ago, I think we had the most sales ever in the city, 140 I think it was. And it can vary from year to year where the ratios are. One plat might up, one plat might be down. So when somebody comes in to me and they say, my value's too high, I say, okay, let's talk about it. And they say, well, I look at their number and it's like, let's say 006. And so I go into my study and I say, 006, well, there was 12 sales in '06 and our ratio was 83%. We were too low in that whole area, and that's the area your house is in. The theory is this, good or bad. If there's 70 sales in International Falls and our ratio is too low, and the property is selling for more than my value, it's reasonable to expect that all property in the city is worth more. Right? It's reasonable to think that. Here's the problem with that. We're mass appraisers. And so we go in the city or whatever and we put 10% on, 20%, 30, whatever. You know what's going to happen? There's going to be homes that are still too low. And there's also going to be homes that just were too high, flat out too high. And we try to fix that if we can. I mean, if you honestly come in and we look at that, we agree with you, we need to do something about that. But here again, we're mass appraisers. We're not perfect on that. I could show you sales, Shorewood Drive. I mean, we raised value in Shorewood Drive. And when I was done raising value in Shorewood Drive, their new values were still lower than what those 4 homes sold for. I didn't dare raise Shorewood Drive to get it to 90. I mean, my God, you don't want to do that because it's 4 sales in Shorewood Drive is just a trend for this year only. And we don't want to overreact to that. And then next year, we went overboard. We try not to do that, you know. On the other hand, as you can look at Shorewood Drive, 2 of those sales were off water, 2 were on water, and they both had bad ratios. So it kind of didn't make a difference whether it was on water or off water in that particular deal, yeah. And the next year you could find out Shorewood Drive is 95%, you know, you just don't know. Interest, you know, the funny thing is interest rates go up. It didn't seem to affect a whole lot, you know, in terms of sales. You know, out on the lake it's a lot worse because it used to be on the lake a good sized property was a couple $100,000. You probably can't move on the lake for less than $400,000 or $500,000 today, you know. And a lot of high valued property is bought by out of towners, and we can't dictate who buys it and where they're from. We don't do that. Say that's discrimination. I'm sure if you were selling your property, you'd be happy to get the most price no matter who it was on that. Do you understand the process? Any questions I can answer on it? Next year, a whole different deal. I don't know what's going to happen next year. And we'll have to wait and see. We're already into the new year. You know, it started October 1st of 2024. We've settled down on the lake, just as a side note. This year, there were, I can't remember how many sales on the lake. The ratio is 95%. We're so happy not to have to touch the lake. We're happy we don't have to touch International Falls. These last 3-4 years, holy cow. You know, you're not us, but you don't, honest to God, you don't know what it's like for us to sit in the office and stare at these friggin' numbers and we got to go up 70-75%. How do you explain that? You don't explain it by saying, oh, people pay more for property. You know what you get? Well, that's fine. I'm not selling mine.
Yeah, that's
Okay? The last 3 years, and I think it's been statewide, have just been awful for us. There was a time when we were putting 10-20% on, we were hurting about that. You know, that 2-3 years ago down in Rainier on the river, we went up 75%, and those are not small homes. You take a home that's valued at 5, 6, 700,000, go up 75%, whew, you're over $1 million. Just like that. There's a big myth out there. If somebody builds a monster home next to you, that doesn't change your value. That home is valued on what it is. The size of the home, the style of the home, that doesn't affect yours at all. And so, people have an idea, well, whatever. No, your value is your house.
But if that home sells,
Pardon?
if that home sells, you just said it affects the
If
value.
it can affect the whole ratio, yes. But when you get into ratios, you can have a bad ratio by a home that's only $20,000 and it sells for $40,000. That's just as bad as a $100,000 home selling for $120,000, $130,000. That's a ratio. Say, and when we go up 10%, 20% on buildings, it's in the city. Like I say, if we go 10% on the whole city, every person's buildings within the whole city goes up the same percentage, 10%. If that's what we do. We don't piece it out and say, well, we look at this house and it don't fit. We look at that. We can't do that. Say, that's why it's so friggin' important when you get this yellow notice. And if you come in, we're going to tell you, more than likely, unless you added a building, re-roof, that the reason we raise your values is because homes are selling for more. And why should we treat you any different than everybody else? But the fact is, there is a possibility when we put that increase on, maybe yours just went too high, and we look at it and say, no, I don't like that. I think you're right, it is too high. We do that. But you got to be careful doing that, because when people come in, they're just, you brought up the deal back there about having an appraisal. That's something to look at. But when they come in and say, well, I can never get that. I don't know what to do. You could be right, you could be wrong. I don't know what to tell you. I'm amazed sometimes when people kind of talk us down the Lord and the value, and it pops up for sale. And oh man, now they're looking at the other end of it there, Boy, did we miss that one. But we're on your side. I know sometimes it doesn't feel it. Look, I'm like you. I know what's going on. I know what the tax situations are. I know with the economy and what everything's going on, it's tough on all of us. No question about that. We come along, we raise values, it just makes it worse. I understand that. But we don't have the liberty to kind of change what we're doing. I want you to understand that. We just don't have that liberty.
Why?
Because it's regulated by the state of Minnesota, Department of Revenue.
So they would be the ones to deal with these.
What I do is done statewide in every county. They all do it the same way. Yeah.
Well, who come up with this 90 to 105?
It's always been that way forever. That's to keep property valued within the market value range. That's what that's about. And you got a 15% swing there. My experience has been, going back to your appraisals, I've had a couple people go and get appraisals on big homes, and they find out the realtor saying, yeah, it's worth that. You could get that for it. I don't know.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So why is the property in Cooch County valued less than like St. Louis County?
Then where?
Like St. Louis County, Crane Lake area.
Oh, it's half the price. I don't know why.
I mean, should our value be higher? I mean, nothing.
I have friends that have property in St. Louis County, in Camp Togama. If they're Lake Home was here on Rainy Lake here, it'd be half the value. That can only be, I'm assuming that property, for whatever reason, is selling for a lot more. It's the same thing, getting off the track here. Does everybody understand the difference between the school districts and how they sit? Do you know what 361 looks like? 362, Little Fork area? You know how big 363 is? Goes from the Rainy River all the way down to Northtown. Okay? We split, when we do a sales ratio study, we split 363 in half because we don't want the lower value, lower level properties affected by the Rainy River sales. The trouble is, down in the lower part of 363, those values are affected by the neighboring counties. You know, we're sitting here talking about city. You should see the issues we've had with land. You should see the increases we've taken on land, for crying out loud. You're talking people that got 400, 500, 600 acres. So on one hand, you look at this and you say, okay, you've got 3-4 years ago, our average acreage was $700 an acre. Okay? Your minimum $1,000 an acre. Minimum. You're getting $1,000. It used to be you would get $700 an acre for a 40. You'd maybe get $600 an acre for a 60 or 70. Maybe $400 an acre for an 80, 120, whatever. Guess what? They're all over $1,000 an acre. We've seen 40 acres selling for as high as $53,000. And you're not talking prime hunting land in tillable, whatever. It's outrageous. And here's the kicker. I mean, figure it out. Take 400 acre times $700, $280,000, and take 400 acre times $1,000. Your value just went up for $300,000. Now, you know, yeah, you're paying more taxes on it, but holy crap, look what it's worth today. Land has just been giving us a headache.
What does river property go for?
Pardon?
What is river property?
It's all
go for
different.
acre?
It's all different because we put, the Rainy Lake has its own frontage values. The islands have their own frontage values. 361 and 363 has its own river values. Shorewood Drive has its own river values. They're all different.
362?
Well, 362, it has no water on the Rainy River, but you got the Little Fork and the Big Fork.
Right.
And we're going, I don't want to complicate this whole deal. On the water, and I did this a long time ago on the lake, we go to the tier system. First 100 feet, second 100 feet, third 100 feet. It gives a break to people that got 1,000, 2,000 front footage. Okay? It pieces it out. And on the lake, your frontage only goes 200 feet deep. I don't want to complicate on that either, but that's where your value is on the water. When you get into 363, you've got bigger portions of land on the river. You've got 40 acres, whatever, you know. The sales on the Rainy River in 361, they're getting off the charts. They're up in the $400,000 or $500,000 range. On the Rainy River, yeah.
But not, you don't know on the Little Fork River what?
No, I wouldn't, not offhand, no. Say, generally when we value river, we study the values on the river and we try to isolate sales on the water. You know, I have all kinds of layers on my computer. I have a layer that I can show you all land-only sales in the county. I got a layer I can show you all the building sales in the county. I can go back 10 years. We have come so far. It used to be somebody come in, they said, you know, what's property worth in this area? I said, I don't know. We got to get out 10 books and go through yours and flip them over. If you come in and you show me where your 40 is, I can go on there and click 20, 24, 23, 22, boom, there's all the sales in that whole area right there. Say, we really try to stay tuned in what's going on in your area. Okay? there's not a big difference in land value in the county between farming and hunting. They're both valuable. It's amazing what hunters pay for property today, okay? I mean, years ago, somebody say, well, 40 acres, got a creek run to it, that's not worth anything, it's wet, not they, oh God, I want that because I'm deer hunter and I need that river going through there and that creek, and yeah, it's valuable. You're seeing people picking up big parcels at a very high price. I mean, we've seen 160 acres selling for $160,000. The city itself, land is kind of not really taken off the charts on that. But it's tough. I mean, gosh, we have a big job to do. And you can see all of these taxing districts, we got to get them to. And that's not commercial. That's not homesteads. That's not eggs. We do all that. You know, we get a lot of calls on agriculture and what do I got to do to get ag and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, but all we do is value. It's all we do is value. We study sales like crazy. And, you know, it's an ongoing process. We're already going into the next year. I would love it. Nothing would make me more happier than I run the ratios on everything and they're over 90%. I don't have to do anything. I like it like Little Fork this year. Came in over 105 and reduced the value 10%. I like that. And you know, pretty much everybody here is residential. We have to value all the commercial stuff, you know, the big motels, the holidays, gas stations, all that kind of stuff's all got to have a value. And that's not easy to do because you don't have them in here. You know, sales, when I was an appraiser with Bill Torseth, it was hard because try and find comps. I know appraisers down the cities back when I started that you could go down the cities and if you needed a comp within 2-3 miles, you'd have 10-15 comps. And up here, good luck. You know, it's hard. Any questions? Anything else we can answer while you're here? You don't have to be happy, but
Thank you for taking the time to put on the presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
We part of that is because there's just so misinformation out there on what we do. I mean, I'll read stuff on there and say, oh, I'm tired of my values going up due to lake sales. I'm like, I want to jump in, but I don't dare. But it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way.
You were saying that, excuse me, your property is the first 200 feet like on water?
Where?
Well, I'm not sure. You just said water. I didn't know if you meant the lake or the river or...
On the lake.
That's strictly the lake.
Let me tell you a little story. Every now and then I run into something I don't have an answer to. That could happen here, okay? We never had that type of system on the lake. When I started, there was no tier system. You could go out on Grindstone Island, Stop Island, whatever. There can be 200-foot lots side by side, and one is valued at $30,000, and the next one's valued at $80,000. Why? Don't make any sense to me. So what I do is I equalize it, and I determine the value based on sales, and then every parcel is tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, like that, okay? I got into an issue where somebody on the lake had a lake property was like 800 feet deep, and they sold the back half, okay? And they came in, I said, oh, my value reduced. And I said, well, your value is on the water. And he's like, I don't care what you think. I sold half my land. I want my value reduced. And I said, I don't have an answer for you. I've got to figure this out. So now we go on the lake. I'll find it here real quick if you're interested. I'll I'll see if I can find it. I don't know if I can pull it that quick. I can't find it here offhand.
Well, what about the river? Is that, is there any, is that,
On the lake, we go back 200 feet.
yeah,
We don't do that on the river.
okay.
And so what happens is that took care of if you sell the back half of your land. We call that over 200 feet excess acreage. And it has a relatively small value on it. It's not worth what the frontage is, but it's worth something. And I just decided on 200 feet. It's like a buffer zone. So I can say your frontage goes back 200 feet. Everything over that is back, goes back further than that. Yeah, I know what I'm looking for, but I can't. Here, right here. Are you on the lake? Okay. You're going to love this. Nobody else will care. Okay. Now it's not showing up now. I don't know why. We have an adjustment guide for the lake. It's tiered and depth. So if our buffer zone is 200 feet and you're underneath that, that's a discount. If your width is 100 feet and you go under that, the value is higher per front foot. We have all that. The values on the big lake are different than the values on the island. Channels, they're different value completely. Black Bay, different value completely as the big lake. On the big lake, we have the highest value, I think, on the big lake originally was $1,500. That's probably about $1,800 front foot right now. And that's probably a sand beach type area. We don't, when we get out into the big acres, 40 acres, 80, we will take 5 acres and call it woods. We look at GIS, like what you're seeing here. We got to look at this and try and figure out what that is. Is that trees? Is it swamp? That's what we look at, say, and then value it accordingly on that, yeah. You get into trouble when you get into the big fork, little fork. Is it a river or is it a creek? When it starts getting way down there. It's really hard to know. I will tell you this, almost always it seems like anything that's on water sells for more than what our values are. The Ratwell River's been a hot item. Lynx Island's been a little bit of hot island. Here's what happens on the lake and everywhere else further. You got desirable property and you got what we would say undesirable. It stays undesirable until the prices of everything else go out of sight. And all of a sudden people will take undesirable and turn it into desirable. Yeah. There's probably no such thing as a bad lot on the lake anymore. Anything else we can help you with?
You say these places are mandated, or your formula is mandated by the state.
The state, that's how we have to run the ratios.
Okay, and how much of the tax that you...
Can't answer.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to understand, when we do values, we don't have a clue what it does to taxes. We just don't. We don't deal in that. And incidentally, we don't have a limit how high we can raise value. Here's what I hear a lot, and we don't even pay attention to it. My value went up 300%. My value went up that. Well, guess what? You can take a lot that's worth $2,000 and raise it to $4,000. What's the percentage? Off the charts. You're talking $2,000. Take a house on the lake that's worth $500,000 and raise it that much. Yeah. And so we don't have a clue what our values do, because we're just not involved. That's not what we do. You know? And, the tax systems is a whole different deal. When you get into taxes, homesteads, that's a big issue, because when your value goes up, your homestead credit goes down. And then you get your taxable market value is higher because your homestead went down. Say, in those homestead credits and stuff, that's not us. We don't put them on. There was a time, incidentally, when they had what was called limited market value. And that was the way it was when I started. And they had a threshold that if your value went up a certain percentage or amount, statewide, the increase would be put over 3 years. And the idea of that actually sounded pretty good, because let's say you're going up $90,000. Okay, we'll put 30 on this year, 30 on next year, 30 the year after. Well, what happened was, it was a county nightmare. Because this year your value went up 90, 30 you go up. When we've done the ratios again, now you're going to go down 30. But wait, we're supposed to go up another 30 from, you know what I mean? It was a nightmare. You couldn't track it. Yeah. I'm somewhat, I kind of guess I don't understand why the state, there's states that have looked at doing things for senior citizens. Okay? And this is just my opinion, what I'm going to tell you right now. Okay? We live in a county that is, to me, it's kind of like a bad recipe, so to speak. Not that's a bad county, I don't mean that. We have an aging population. I'm part of that. Okay? We lose population. From what I understand, we have a fairly high poverty rate. Okay? So what you got is kind of an agreement, not a lot of money. And so when you have that, you got a lot of people on fixed incomes and all that kind of stuff. And it hurts when all these little things go up. It hurts big time. I've had, I told you earlier that it's hard sometimes sitting in the office really raising what you have to do. I've had people send me their whole friggin' monthly expenses and ask me how in the hell they're going to pay for them. That hurts.
I hear about people that'll leave their house.
Yeah, that hurts.
I've heard a number of remarks lately on that.
We have nothing to do with taxes, but I understand where you're coming from on them. I really do. We're really tied into how we do what we do. We can't change it. Yeah. That 90, 105% isn't even negotiable. When everything's said and done, they have state board meetings looking at our ratios. And if it's under 90, they'll issue a state order to get it up there. And it goes on everybody. I mean, if I'd be under in the city doing what I do, and they would order a 5 or 10%, it's going on the whole city. So look what it does to those plats where they're already 99%. Say, I'll take the credit for what I do. I'll take the responsibility for what I do. I'd like to think our office is good at dispersing those values to where they belong. It's not easy. I mean, we spend hours and hours, and you see all the sales. We look at all those sales. I'll tell you this, I kind of skipped this. When we get all the sales, what we use are what's called good sales. Those 70, relative sales we don't count. Bank sales we don't count. Foreclosures, whatever, we don't count. If you're living next door to somebody and you got in to buy that property, we throw that sale out. We want good sales. So we throw a lot of sales out because they're not good sales, yeah. And you can have a sale with nothing, contract for deed, nothing down, that gets pitched. It's not a normal sale to sell property, but Nothing down. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.